Hello and welcome to today's NeoSystems CMMC Town Hall event. Now I'd like to introduce your host, Ed Bassett of NeoSystems. Ed?
Thank you, Don. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the next in our series of weekly town hall meetings on CMMC. We are recording these sessions as part of our community outreach to the Defense Industrial Base, and we've had very good participation so far from both audience as well as guests from the CMMC Accreditation Body Board of Directors. We have John Weiler here again with us today, who was here also in June for a little more information on what's going on in the continuing evolution of CMMC initiative. Our focus as a service provider is on mostly the organizations seeking certification. That's who's in our audience today. So if you're in the audience, please send any questions you have in the Q&A window in the bottom of the Zoom session, and we'll be trying to answer as many of those questions as we can on the air today. So John Weiler had a distinguished career in IT. For the last 30 or so years, he's been focused on federal IT and specifically on IT acquisition reform. Most recently, he's the executive director at the Interoperability Clearinghouse, which is a nonprofit research institute. He's co-founder and CEO of the IT Acquisition Advisory Council, which is a public-private partnership helping agencies to embrace commercial IT innovations. And John's also a member of the board of directors of the CMMC accreditation body. He co-chairs the standards committee, and he's chairman of the strategic relationships group. So John, thanks for joining us today. Since you were on our town hall series about a month ago, a lot's happened in the CMMC world. So thanks for taking time to visit with us again and update us. Anything kind of top of mind news-wise that you'd like to comment on before I dive into some questions?
Yes, and by the way, thank you so much for having me back. It's I think those who work in the CMMC AB live in dog world years, so we get 7 years worth of stuff done in a normal human year. So the team has been working tirelessly to set up the training curriculum, set up the certification program, getting the website out, and soliciting those who want to become 3PAOs, advisors, QA, and the response has been amazing. So the real challenge that we see, in planning for this activity was one, how do you take the standard, which I believe is very strong. It's a derivative of NIST 171, as we all know. And what 171 doesn't have is a maturity model associated with it. So that's been the extension. And it also doesn't have an audit structure, which we've had to build in. So my team, my colleagues, in the standards group have really been doing the lion's work of putting this thing together, making it operational, and then handing it off to the training groups and the certification guys and guys setting up the 3PO. And since then, we've gotten, I think, about 180 applications already submitted for those who are ready to be or want to be 3PAOs. And, I think that's about the right size to handle the 300,000 contractors. Obviously it's going to be over the number of years. Katie has told us that come around November, the OMB should be completed their rule changes. They have the DFAR rules already in process around the CMMC, changing the rules to make CMMC required in the acquisition process. My colleagues, Keith Nakasone at GSA FAS, has a new contract out, and he's going to require that the contractors embrace CMMC as part of their onboarding onto this new vehicle, because they want DoD to use GSA. GSA's and NASA are the two biggest facilitated contracting agencies to help DoD go to market. DoD doesn't have enough contracting officers to support all that DoD needs to do, is the reality. And these guys, NASA, SOUP, and GSA FAS have really provided a tremendous support to DoD. And on my team, we are now rolling out the strategic relations group. And I think that's important to understand what that is. This is taking advantage of the many hats that I wear as a consortium, which the ITAC is, and bring to bear the resources, the expertise, the community represented in these standards bodies to understand how the market evolves, so we can inform the standards committee what's changing. finance has seen a new threat. They've embraced this new commercial standard. We should find a way to incorporate that, or at least recognize this as a necessary part of the ecosystem. We also have an ecosystem that we're developing. So if we can get the AIAs, NDIAs, Professional Services Council, the standards community, which represents, guys like yourself that are very smart, pushing the envelope on emerging market standards. If we can create an ecosystem, then the ability to move the entire market with them acting as a force multiplier, doing mentoring, doing trading, really addresses the problem of the vast expanse of the defense industrial base, and how do we shift 300,000 contractors into a paradigm that they have real cyber hygiene. So when you sit back and you look at all the moving parts, I feel more comfortable than I did before that the community coming together to support us is actually necessary, not nice to have, but a critical factor in our success. If we don't have the support and voice of AIA and NDIA and Professional Service Council, the standards bodies, this will not succeed. And having them help bring their community to bear and creating tools, training tools, and mentoring programs that creates, create once and apply many. So there's going to be lessons learned that can be regurgitated through this new structure that we're creating, where we can share, how did I get this issue? How do I deal with this issue? Because not everybody is at the same level today. Sorry, Ed, thank you.
Well, we participate in some of those industry groups, and certainly what we observed is that, first of all, those groups are doing a great job of bringing the voices together. And second of all, CMMC, both the DoD side and the accreditation body, is doing a very good job of listening, right? And so you guys have said that as a mantra from the very beginning. And in that respect, I think it's working. John, before we started our session, you were mentioning about a group of some of the largest prime contractors that is acting as sort of an industry advisory council to the CMMC. Can you give a little insight into that? These are the biggest defense contractors in the country, right?
Yes, so they call the Big Six, and it's a informal advisory group. It's no secret that meets with the PMO. We are sometimes invited to be in that same meeting, even though we're not. And it's the reality check. It's, this is, what do you think of this? And we're considering that, and they give this or no way, that's not going to happen. We know, been there, done that. Don't do that. So it gives a reality check of those who have to live this world every single day, of what's implementable, what's reasonable, what's just that. It's the reality check, and what we're hoping as we evolve is we expand that voice through this SRG, Strategic Relations Group, where we give greater voice to that kind of community, so that it's not just based on the view of six, but the view also of the small businesses and the standards community and the larger community. I hope that answered the question.
It does. And I think we've seen sort of an evolution of the kind of questions that are coming in. In fact, I see some coming in here from the audience today, so thank you. Please keep those coming. But we've seen an evolution from sort of what is CMMC and what is it all about, to questions changing to how does it apply to my unique circumstance? And that brings up these sort of interesting edge cases, because I think everybody views their business and says, okay, I'm doing this, I'm trying to figure out how the standard applies to that and what I have to do. So I think some of those questions get answered by the assessment standard, and I know there's a lot of folks that are waiting for that to show up. You're co-chairing the standards committee. So Regan Edens, your colleague, joined us last week, and he mentioned that a standard has gone forward to the DoD for review. So first, I guess, congratulations. I mean, that's a monumental task, tremendous amount of work to get that together. I'm assuming that's going to take a while, and we need to still sort of stay in holding pattern for all those things we're waiting to see in a public release. Is that going to be a while, do you think? Is it, you get news on that?
No, and I'm looking at one about the DFARS update, that we're expecting to, in November timeframe, but we're not waiting. Things are going to be moving very rapidly. If you register for the CMMC newsletter, you'll be getting those updates when everybody else does. and the DoD PMO website. So things are moving very fast, faster than anybody can see from outside. And the rapid maturation of our work and taking the great work of SEI and John Hopkins, we're bringing different perspectives. The FFRDC perspective is sometimes a little bit academic, and that's okay. But then when you bring it inside the working groups, Regan and Jeff are leading, we bring reality into a perspective of those who are implementers, practitioners, not, which is an extension of a complement to the R&D perspective that we sometimes get. And we bring, hey, we thought about how do you execute this? And we suggest this. And because we have a consensus-based process in the working groups, it carries a lot of weight when we go back to DoD, and sometimes they're stuck in the Pentagon or in their home and they don't see what the rest of the world is seeing or hears or does. So it's an educational process for them. And I know that there's great appreciation by the PMO, Stacy Bostjanek. She has been, a wonderful partner to be working through.
So, John, audience member question. So this is really about how CMMC is going to reach the small and mid-sized businesses, right? So in many cases, this is new work for them, right? It's something that they haven't, and that's why CMMC exists, recognizing that the level of implementation of the DFARS and the NIST 171 is inconsistent because people don't always interpret it the same way and maybe aren't evaluating it on a level playing field. So that was, sort of some of the reasons why CMMC came into being. So now small businesses are trying to figure out how to comply. They need advice. How do they get the best advice at the lowest price? Like, what is CMMC doing to make sure that that community is able to shop with some confidence? You mentioned ecosystem that's being built. What's happening there to make sure that those small businesses have good access to what they need?
Well, there's competition is the number one. So by having, several hundred certified 3POs and maybe more advisors will provide competition to market versus having, one big 800-pound gorilla saying, I'm the expert, you come to me and here's the ticket, take it or leave it. So competition is one thing. Also having communities that care about small business, like the ITAC and its extended partnership that we're creating with NDIA, Professional Services Council, America's Small Business group that's working with us as well. CompTIA, which is working with. So they already have community, they already have training programs, they have well-greased operations that already serve these community. So having nonprofits working as advocates for small businesses that aren't making profits is a way to help accelerate. It's not going to do the heavy lifting, but at least it brings some light level training, awareness, lessons learned to the community that can reach hundreds of thousands. So we're actually being pulled into the UK MOD, the Japan MOD, ANISA, Canadian MOD. They want to bring this on. So by having strong existing communities of practice, standards bodies, and these industry groups working together, we are a very elastic structure that can ingest and reapply and make available in a way that I think is going to be pretty amazing. So we're not ready right now to ingest that, but we are preparing to address that issue. And I believe this public-private partnership expansion under the ITAC will be ready to answer the mail and help those businesses who thrive on defense business, and soon it's going to be NASA too, by the way, because they're embracing, and GSA, to be able to comply without going out of business. And COVID has put tremendous pressure on most of us. And I feel like a small business as well. You run a small nonprofit, you're kind of a small business. It's just, yeah.
It's changed a lot of things. There's no question about that. And, you know, I think it made it even more important that I think people have their security in order, but also do that in a way that's affordable, right? And that they don't waste time on things that are maybe a false start or gold plating that's not necessary, that sort of thing. So for those people who are needing to get CMMC, there's two questions that we get at the very, very beginning. The first is when is this coming to a theater near me? Like, when do I need to do this? And the second is, what level do I need to be, right? Because that's kind of the fundamental.
That is a great question. The first thing you have to look at is, do you believe you're going to be handling CUI, FCI data? That's the first question. What are you selling? What are you providing to the government? Are you involved in the development of weapon systems, IT systems, you know, other capabilities? So the more you say yes to that, you're going to move to a minimum of level 3. There's been some articulation that if you are a COTS provider, commercial off the shelf, and that includes brushes, t-shirts, eyeglasses, computer software and hardware, that you might not have to go through this process at all. So we need to understand, if you're in the software business and the computer system business, you're most likely going to be touching DoD's networks and handling CUI data. And so that perception that you're going to get a free pass should be dismissed. But there are a number of those that are selling various services, you know, let's say graphic design work, or, you know, cutting the lawn, or selling t-shirts or shoes, that you don't have to go through this process. Though it might be a good idea, I think cyber hygiene across America is necessary. I think everybody should be paying attention to this no matter what they do, because our enemies are out there to exploit us no matter who we are, where we are.
As a security practitioner, my whole career, I certainly think it's always a good idea to have some cyber hygiene, even if you're not strictly required to by the DoD. So you mentioned storing, processing, handling CUI, controlled and classified information. What if you've moved all that to the cloud? And a lot of people are doing that, especially smaller businesses are doing that for business reasons, not even for the security benefits. This audience, I'll just read the kind of the audience version of this question. You know, how does that impact on their need to get CMMC if they've moved all that processing to the cloud? And do the cloud providers need to get CMMC certified? And does it help if they're FedRAMP? Kind of throw all that in together.
Yeah, so it absolutely helps if you are putting your information into any computer system that has gone through some kind of certification process like FedRAMP. That actually moves the ball forward. But do understand, the fact that the FedRAMP is basically defining that you have the controls to secure and manage data doesn't mean that your organization has the expertise to protect it. Let me bring up a well-known case study. Capital One of the largest banks in America, the only one to go all in on public cloud. And they've had the largest breach in banking history because human error, misconfiguration of an S3 bucket resulted. And they're liable, not the cloud provider. Cloud provider provides the controls. It doesn't guarantee that those controls are properly used. So there's a lot of small businesses who don't have the expertise in that shared security model to know how to configure those 400 different controls. And also, that's only addressing the data in the back end. It doesn't address the transmission layer. It doesn't address the UI that you might be accessing from a remote device. Those also have to be addressed. And be aware, most of the 171 controls that are referenced out of the CMMC is about organizational process. It's a maturity model of your organization. Technology is only part of it. And having, as I love to say, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So it does not mitigate the knowledge and experience that someone may need. So as the ITAC goes forward with this expanded partnerships, we're bringing in those experts who know how to do that as well, even though it's not necessarily defined in the CMMC. It's a necessary part of the larger cyber hygiene that people have to pay attention to. The audit doesn't determine whether you're leaving S3 buckets open.
Thanks. And the other side of that question is, does the service provider, the cloud service provider, do they have to get CMMC? So in other words, you mentioned it doesn't
Absolutely.
alleviate the contractor's requirement. They still have to use the cloud in a responsible and secure way, but can they choose any cloud, or do they have to choose ones that have gotten a CMMC certification?
Well, I don't see CMMC certification being applied to the cloud providers. See, the cloud providers are like any other supplier to the government. They have to go through the process. The fact that they have a good tool doesn't give them a free pass. They still have to look at their organizational cyber hygiene. How are they managing their resources? So it's, as we say internally as a joke, it's apples and chainsaws. Just because you're selling a technology that has controls doesn't mean that your organization meets the criteria established by those 171 processes or those 17 domains. So they're struggling with this. The community struggles with how do you map, what I think is good things. And I think the cloud providers provide a great value to the community because it reduces your risks substantially, but it does not eliminate it. So it is a good first step, but it is not a free pass. And they're going to find that the 3 PAOs are going to feel the same way because they're the ones that eventually are going to have to look at whatever certifications that they've already received, whether it's FedRAMP, whether they're using a FedRAMP certified product, or they also have the talent, proper application, and internal rigor to make sure that all the other illities are being addressed. But there is no, there's still a path forward. We're trying to give credit where credit due, but not give the false sense that just because you're using a tool that you are somehow immune to all the threat profiles that the CMMC is meant to defend against.
One of the other scenarios that we run into, especially with contractors that put a lot of people on site at government agencies, is that a lot of their employees end up working with government furnished equipment, or smaller trade companies may only work on their primes equipment. For instance, if they're doing very small slice of work on a large project, they may actually go to equipment provided by their prime contractor and work on the CUI over there and not actually bring it to their computer system. So if a company doesn't have any computer systems that are involved with
hold or manage
data,
CUI data, that is an issue that we have to take on, and there's other questions that come up when you bring up that scenario. Is the worker who's coming into the agency, is he a bad actor? If you remember what happened at NSA with Snowden, top secret, poly TSI clearances, worked for Booz Allen. That guy took data and stole it. And he was working on some of the most classified secure systems in the world. So how the contractor manages their employees has to still be considered, even if they're not taking on, or they're going to a government site or a prime site and doing all their compute. We still have to protect against the individuals and how human resources manages, vets, and make sure that those things are addressed. But it will definitely help. And I think the Raytheons and Lockheeds and Northrop Grumman's, and hopefully through their alliances in this larger strategic partnership, can help small businesses. Government can make available their systems for those who don't even have computers. They have a laptop and that's it. And we're
seeing some creating like enclaves, right? Where
that is a great idea for the small business.
Reduces the burden.
It needs to be expanded. I would love to see DoD make available the Mill Cloud or the eventual Jedi platform to small, medium businesses at a discount or free. Maybe Microsoft, who is the current Jedi winner, might be willing to offer some incentives and mechanisms to help small, medium businesses. So I think there's a lot that can be done to reduce the burden, to reduce the risk, and accelerate the certification process, and make sure when that certification is given that it's based on the right things being measured. measure what matters is, a good old saying.
Cool. John, a few minutes ago, you mentioned the GSA contract, the STARS RFP. It came out a week or two ago,
Yes.
and that has CMMC. So first, I think the first RFP that has CMMC in it. So again, congratulations on getting it actually out there on the street. I know maybe not a CMMC accreditation body initiative, but certainly good to see it being embraced at that level. It's a big contract and involves a lot of contractors. One of the interesting parts of that RFP was a statement that the CMMC levels that are of the awardees are going to be published, potentially in a marketplace that GSA runs. You're shaking your head no. So my question was, is that the intent in general, that the CMMC levels are a matter of public record, or is that only going to be certain contracts, or is GSA not really going to do this? Is that
well, humans make errors.
Got
and
it.
I believe that error was made in good faith, but DOD has said that we're not going to publish contractor CMMC level because what it does, it creates a target for our enemies. So I believe that error will be corrected, but the intent is honest. They're trying to do the right thing at GSA. I applaud them for embracing the standard. But since they don't sit in the Pentagon and work with the PMO, and they don't sit within the CMMC board, you can only assume things with the information you have, and you make your best decisions based on data you have. So I applaud them for being on the edge, and it's easy to forgive those who make mistakes who are trying to do the right thing.
Well, certainly good to see it out there in a contract. Other contracts, Pathfinder contracts, I think are coming out. Any others been announced other than that GSA STARS? Have we seen any other contracts that have announced the name of the contract so people might know, hey, I'm on that, I'm involved in that in some way?
I do have that knowledge. I don't know if it's been made public. So to err on being a little bit more conservative, I'm going to say Pathfinders have already been identified. The board is working on those Pathfinders with DOD. I am not aware of those things being publicly disclosed. So I'm going to not comment on that, if you don't mind. I will go back to the board and ask if they can release that information to the community and if it's appropriate. But I apologize that I'm uncomfortable with answering that question.
Good enough. Good enough. We're just about at the end of our time, and I do have a bunch of audience questions that I haven't unfortunately had a chance to get to. So we'll try to maybe do those in a future session. So we'll definitely invite you back for more discussion on this. It's evolving over time as we all try to do the right thing and bring the bar up in terms of our cyber hygiene. Anything quick you'd like to say in closing? Last minute or two we have.
No, just watch this channel and. More will come. Thank you for this public service that you're doing.
Much appreciated. So we will be back in a week. We will be back in a week on a Wednesday, July 22nd, 1 o'clock Eastern, continuing our series of town hall meetings on CMMC. And I can't announce yet who the guest is, not confirmed yet for the 22nd, but keep an eye on the stream of invitations that you have for this, and you'll know who's going to be here next week. Again, trying to keep everybody abreast of the latest and greatest with CMMC. John, thanks for your time. Folks in the audience, thanks for the questions you sent in. Apologize we didn't get a chance to answer all of them today. Please join us in the future on Wednesdays, 1 o'clock Eastern. Thanks.
Bye now.